Hello everyone, Reginald Scott here. Welcome to the video. Great to see you all again, and I hope you're all doing really well today. So this is a ride along and talk along kind of video today. I know a lot of you guys enjoy this kind of format, and I haven't done one of these in a really long time. So today we're going to be talking about drugs. Drugs in cycling, performance enhancing drugs specifically. If you enjoy this kind of content, oh my goodness, look at the size of that rock. I have to move that. There's no way I can leave that in the road. Look at that. Let's run back and move that. There's a beast of a rock. Look at that. Yeah. Chuck that to one side. Goodness me. Sorry folks. I can't leave that there in the road. That's going to do somebody an injury. So there you go. It was safe to do so. So it's okay to pick it up. Anyway. Where was I? Yeah, if you enjoy this kind of content, please do like and subscribe. Share with a friend. Hit the notification bell. All that good stuff, okay? I'm in the wrong gear now. Oh dear. Now this is going to be a controversial one because I think my opinion is pretty controversial. I don't know if anyone's going to like my opinion on this, but we'll see. I don't really do these videos to be liked. I just do them to be honest. What I think, what I feel based on my own experiences. So during the video, what I'm going to do is tell you about a few sports people, professional athletes that I knew personally, or I know personally, who were doping. And they were all doping for different reasons. They were all doing different sports. I will tell you as much as I can without revealing their identities. So my first thing is, I really believe, like I'd bet money on it, that there's drugs in professional cycling, okay? I would bet money on that. I'd bet my life savings on that there is drugs in professional cycling. And I'm fairly confident that the majority of pro riders, if not all of them, but definitely the majority, are doping. That's my opinion. Now, why do I hold that opinion? How can I possibly say that? Because I know there's a lot of people out there, I've met them when I've spoken to people, I'm sure I'll get them in the comments today, who say, you know, how could you say that? How could you say that there's doping going on? You know, there's testing. If there was doping, we'd have found out by now. All this kind of thing, right? And they really believe that, you know, cycling, professional cycling is now clean. You know, there was the bad old days of Lance Armstrong when there was drugs in cycling. Now there's no drugs in cycling, you know, it's perfectly clean. That's what they believe. And these people are not bad people. I think these are really good people that believe that. These are very trusting people. These are people who are very honest, who perhaps believe that everyone else is very honest. You know, they think the best of people. That's what I think. I think people who really believe that professional cycling is clean are genuinely deep down good people, okay? And because of that, they're very naive. And unfortunately, I think the world is not like that. And I'm going to explain why. Okay. So, I'm going to get on to my reasons for why I believe the professionals are doping in a moment. But first, I want to tell the three stories of the three professional athletes that I have known in my life. Some of these guys were at the top of their game, okay? They were all men. I knew them back when I lived in the UK. I have met very few professional athletes in my life. but these are the three that I knew the best, okay? And because I knew them very well, I knew that they were doping. And the reason I knew they were doping is because all three of them admitted that they were doping. And also, one of the three athletes, I actually watched him taking the drugs. And those pills were a drug called Winstrol or Windstream, something like that. I'll have to look it up because I'm not an expert. As I said in the interview with Giovanni that I did the other day. By the way, if you haven't seen the interview with Giovanni Prosperi, sorry, I think that's how he pronounces it. If you haven't seen that interview, go watch it. Stick it on while you're doing the washing up or something. It's an hour long, so it's a great way to kill some time if you're folding laundry or you're working on your bike. Just stick it on in the background. You don't need to see my ugly face. Yeah, it's just a conversation. Very important video for the channel, very important video for me, and I'm sure you'll enjoy it. There's a lot of great information in it, and it's just a lovely conversation. As I said to him, I wouldn't even know where to buy this stuff. Like, if I wanted to dope, I wouldn't know the first thing about it. Like, where do you buy that stuff? I don't know. Do you go to the chemist? Do you ask a friend who's a doctor? I have no idea how you get your hands on it as an individual. Now, I've got a theory how the sports teams get their hands on it, but that's different. Anyway, so I watched one of these professional athletes that I knew. I watched him dope, and I spoke to him about it. And I said, why are you doping? And he was saying that he'd been clean for a long time, and he wanted to stay clean. But the problem was that the higher he went up in the rankings, the more people he went up against who he knew were doping. And he knew they were doping because they just had unnatural physical abilities. Like, they would recover so much faster. They wouldn't get tired as quick. You know, they could do the sport harder and faster than what a normal human being would be able to do. And he said, I just realized that everyone around me was doping. And if I wanted to get where I wanted to be in this life, you know, because he dedicated his life since the age of 6 to that one sport, right? He hadn't really got anything else to fall back on. That was what he dedicated his life to. And I'm sure when he started out at 6 years old, he was idealistic. He was like, oh, if I train hard and I work hard and I eat the right diet and I find the right coach, I too could one day be the top of my game, you know, the best in the world. And that's what he wanted to be. And he nearly made it, believe it or not. He was right at the top when he retired. He wasn't number one, but he was close to number one. He went up against number one, let's put it that way. Anyway, he said, look, if I want this, if I really want this, and I do, then I have to dope because everyone else is cheating.
Come on, how do you beat a man on drugs if you're not on drugs?
Wait, did you just admit to being on drugs?
And I said to him, but what about, you know, drug testing? What about if you get caught? And he said, oh, that's not a problem. He said, because there are ways to avoid the testing. He said, we know when we're going to get tested, and we can just flush our system of the chemicals and the signifiers in our blood, yeah, that are going to show us up to be doping way before we get tested. And even if it's kind of a bit of a last minute test, there's things we can do to hide the drugs, right? We can hide it in our system, we can mask it with other drugs, or we can flush it very, very quickly. So he said it's not a problem. He said the only people that get caught are stupid. Yeah, that's the only reason anyone's getting caught, is because they mess up, they forget to do what they should do. They take it at the wrong time, or they take it with the wrong food or whatever. I don't know. That's what he told me. Now I can get across. Okay, so That's what he told me. I can only go by what he said, but let's face it, he got all the way to the end, to the top of his game. He got all the way doping, and he was taking the drugs right in front of me. I've literally watched it happen. I watched somebody take drugs and get all the way to the top of their professional sport, taking drugs, and they never got found out, ever. As far as the fans know, they were 100% clean. So that's my first story. My second story is about a boss I used to have. I actually worked with this guy, and this guy was a professional bodybuilder. So he was a professional athlete, professional sportsman, and of course he was doping. And he said, do you really believe that like Arnold Schwarzenegger and that lot, Schwarzenegger, I don't know how to say it, to be honest with you. Well, that was f***ing stupid, wasn't it? Sorry, that was really stupid. What an idiot. Anyway, he used to joke, he said, do you really think this guy's clean? And at the time I worked for this bloke, Lance Armstrong was, you know, a household name. And not for the bad reasons. Lance Armstrong was a household name because he was the top star in cycling. In my opinion, he was the only true cycling celebrity. You know, he had a celebrity lifestyle, he married other celebrities. You know, everybody knew who Lance Armstrong was, whether you're into cycling or not, which is not something you can say for the cyclists of nowadays. You ask most non-cyclists who Peter Sagan is and nobody would know, right? Or Chris Froome maybe, but not like Lance. Everybody knew who Lance was, and everybody knew, at least I thought they did, that Lance was clean. And I really believed back in the 90s, yeah, when that was all going on, I really believed, and the early 2000s I think it was, I really believed that Lance was clean. I really did. And I used to argue with this bodybuilder bloke all the time about it at work. I used to say, no, he's clean. He gets tested. There's no way he'd cheat. He had cancer. You know, he says he doesn't want to put anything in his body after all the chemo he had. He fought cancer, he lived. You know, what a great guy. And I really believed that his additional lung capacity was due to just some genetic chance, and that his determination was due to the fact he'd beaten cancer.
Everybody wants to know what I'm on. What am I on? I'm on my bike, busting my ass 6 hours a day. What are you on?
And I admired the man, and I still do. That's the thing. I still admire Lance Armstrong as the cyclist that he was or is. I don't like him as a person. I've tried watching his podcast. Quite frankly, I don't like his personality at all. I can't stand listening to the guy, but I respect him massively as a cyclist. I think he is still one of the greatest cyclists ever.
Oh, and Belocchi's gone down. Armstrong's off the road as well. Armstrong complete control there. He's into the field, but what a great bike rider. He's gone across. This is unbelievable. I've never seen this before. Armstrong went across the field there. He's back on the road at 4 kilometers to go. What great reflexes from the man from Texas.
And as Lance Armstrong said himself, you know, everybody else was cheating, so I thought it was okay, right? Everybody else was cheating, so he thought it was absolutely fine. He saw no issue with it because, well, you know, if everyone else is cheating and I'm cheating, then it's fair. Everyone's on the same level, right? And that's kind of the way I see it. I say that if everybody's cheating and you're cheating with the same stuff everybody else is and you win, that just means you're the best cyclist, right? Because the only other deciding factor is the cycling. And when you've seen Lance Armstrong's bike handling skills, they were magnificent. The guy was legendary, like what he could do on that bike. Drugs aren't going to make you a good cyclist. Drugs are going to make you fit, or, you know, make you have high endurance, but they're not going to make you good at this sport. This sport is complicated. There's a lot to it, you know, so you're not going to win, for example, if you choose the wrong gears when you're going up a hill or something. So he's still a great cyclist in my eyes, but yes, he cheated, he doped, and he fooled me and he fooled the whole world for a very long time. Next person, and this is the really interesting one. This one I find very fascinating. So I had a friend, and this friend was a professional athlete, and I'm not going to say what his sport was, but he was part of a team sport. It wasn't cycling, I'll put it that way, okay? He was part of a team sport, and he was part of the British Olympic team back when I knew him. Okay, this was many years ago. Okay, so this is not a current Olympian. This is an Olympian from many years ago. We're talking 20 years ago. Okay, so this guy, so back then 20 years ago I was in my 20s. Okay, this guy was also in his 20s, and he was part of the British Olympic team, and he was doping, and he doped all the way to the Olympics. All right. Okay, drop a few gears, all of them actually. Let's drop all the gears and then we can talk nice and easy. Okay, so yeah, he was part of the British Olympic team for that sport, and he went all the way to the Olympics, and he competed for Great Britain at the Olympics, and he confessed to me that he was doping. But here's what makes his story interesting and different. He did not select the drugs himself. He did not start doping, excuse me, because he wanted to. The reason why he was doping was because it was demanded of him by these coaches and by the team, because British government wants to win. And if you watch the Olympics, it's no coincidence that the richest countries in the world always win all the events, because they have the most sophisticated doping programs. Okay, that's why every year the Americans and Russians, and even the UK, even though it's smaller now and less wealthy, it's why we clean up at the Olympics every single time. It's because we're doping. We're doping massively. This is that hill, by the way, at the beginning, sorry, at the end of my videos, and it didn't used to have this speed bump, and it's a pretty tough hill anyway, but with this speed bump it's even worse. So I don't know if I'll be able to continue talking. I'll do my best. You can hear me heavy breathing on the video. I'll try and stay seated for as long as I can, but the front wheel starts to lift at some point. Oh man, that's tough. Yeah. Ooh. So what I'm telling you is that the British Olympic team, and I was told this by one of their athletes, was doping, and it was sanctioned by the British government. And then when an athlete gets found out, it's always as an individual, isn't it? It's never the whole team, it's always an individual, because two reasons. One, they made a mistake and they got caught. Two, they were sacrificed. Right? Whew. Yeah, I was watching the documentary about the Russian Winter Olympics.
I get connected to this guy, Gregory Rodchenkov, and at the time he's running RUSADA, which is the WADA lab, the World Anti-Doping Lab for Moscow, which is like the third largest, anti-doping lab in the world at the time. This is now 2014, 2015. And Gregory basically is like, yes, I'll help you dope. And I'll help you evade testing, and I'll basically show you how you can game the system. And I'm like, this is nuts. Like, the guy who just did all the testing for the Sochi Olympics and is running the entire anti-doping lab in Russia is...
And when I criticize the Russians, I'm not doing it because I dislike the Russians. I'm doing it because they're just a fine example. But don't forget, everyone's doing this. Everyone who can do this is doing this. So don't blame one nation above another, because they're all at it, right? Anyway, the Russians, was a documentary about the Russian Winter Olympics and how they cheated. And one of the things that came out from that was that if you were getting old, maybe not performing as well as you should, or you just weren't good enough, the Russians would put something in your drugs. And the idea is that what they do is, if, like I say, they don't care about you anymore, they sacrifice you. Come on. Okay. Yeah, they sacrifice you. Oh, I've got to go around because the car behind me doesn't want to overtake. That's fine. Oh, that's steep. There we go. Let's pull over for a minute. Let this guy pass me, because he was nice enough to wait. Thank you. Yeah, the Russians, they put something in your drugs and they sacrifice you. They put something in there which guarantees that you're going to get caught by the authorities. And so this fulfills several advantages for them. Number one, it gets rid of a troublesome athlete that they don't want, without having to fire you or go through the process of telling you that you're useless. They can just then substitute you with somebody else. The second advantage is that it makes the authorities think that their drug testing is working, which then stops any suspicion about the rest of your athletes. Because if they test all of your athletes in a team, let's say there's 8 people in a team, and only one of them comes up positive, well, they can say, oh, well, obviously that one guy or girl was doping. They were obviously doing it by themselves. The Russians can do their own fake investigation, and they could say, yeah, we found the drugs in her work, in her training bag or whatever, her sports bag. You know, her athletes around her knew nothing about it. Her coach knew nothing about it. She was just a bad apple, right? Or he was just a bad apple. And so then the authorities move on, because they go, oh, fair enough, yeah, that makes sense. We only caught that one person, so obviously it was them. They were the only ones doping. And at the same time, all the athletes in the team are doping, but they get away with it. Okay, so that's the second advantage. And like I say, the third advantage is it makes other international teams who maybe are too poor to do this, or not advanced enough to know how to adjust the chemical quantities, it makes them worried to try, right? It makes them think, oh, I shouldn't do this, so I'll get caught. right, I'll get caught, you know, so, and it makes them believe that the Russians are clean, doesn't it? So again, if the Russians win a bunch of medals, nobody's going to complain. Yeah, so that's how it works. So those are the three professional athletes I've known in my life. They're the main guys that I knew. They're the people I knew, had the closest relationships with, and they were all doping, every single one of them. Now, why do I believe that the pro cyclists are definitely doping? Well, number one, it seems kind of obvious, doesn't it?
His performance is off the charts. I do not know what has got into this guy.
No one knew what had gotten into Gustav Ditters that day, but many suspected something had, literally. Suspicions arise.
It's because people get found out all the time. It's quite common. There's a lot of doping scandals in cycling still going on today. If you actually go look for them, you will find stuff. But if you keep your ear to the ground and you monitor all the news, all the small cycling news, you'll see drugs and doping pop up all the time. Quite often, drug mules, you know, people getting the drugs for the teams get caught. And the thing about that is, when they do get caught, they get the full force of the kind of the law dropped on their heads, but the team gets away scot-free. And that's why it's usually the youngest or least experienced members that get the axe. You won't see the top cyclists like your Pogacars and your your Peter Sagans and stuff. You won't see them get caught at the border with a bag full of drugs. Doesn't happen, because they're too valuable. And this is my other reason, okay? This is why I really believe that the pros are doping, is because there's simply too much money involved, like everything, right? People want to see these amazing athletes do these amazing things. They want the winners to keep winning. They want the fanfare and the throngs of the crowds cheering and everybody going along with it. They want the stars and the celebrities. And all of that has a cost. So I believe it's actually in the best interests of the authorities, the UCI or whoever it is that's in charge of the drug testing, to actually encourage the use of drugs or turn a blind eye to it. Because number one is, you will never stop people from taking drugs. You'll never do it. And if you don't understand this, then I can't explain it to you, because you have to be a professional athlete to fully understand it. And that's why when I talked to my friend who was taking the drugs, who showed me himself taking the drugs, right, he explained it to me in no uncertain terms. I have to do this, yeah? I want to win. And if this means winning, I will do it. I will sacrifice anything. Athletes will sacrifice their relationships for the chance to win. So if you think they're not going to take drugs, if that might help them win, you've got another thing coming. Because they definitely will. And so you'll never stop it. Even if you really test and you try everything, somebody will find a way to cheat the system. They always do. You could test people every day, but some scientist somewhere is going to come out with a drug that can't be traced.
I felt that the entire doping system in sport was a fraud. In the case of Lance, well, yeah, he confessed to doping, but the guy to this day never was actually caught. And here's this guy who had passed like, I don't know, 500-600 tests. So as he confesses, and I'd been a cycling fan, a lifelong cyclist, I'm going, wait. You caught the guy based on a criminal investigation, but you didn't catch him based on the science. And if you can't catch the most tested athlete on planet Earth, well, what does this mean for every other athlete on planet Earth?
And then by the time you've developed a testing kit that can test for that drug, by the time you become aware that people have been cheating with that drug, and then develop the testing kit to find that drug in people's system, well, they've adapted the drug and now it's a different drug and now you can't test for it again. You're not going to stop them. And if it means winning, they will do it. So the authorities, I believe, turn a blind eye because they know that cycling can't afford more scandals. Okay, what do I mean by that? Now you look at Lance Armstrong, you look at the good that he did for cycling in the early days. You know, he boosted sales massively. He made, like I say, cycling a household thing. Everybody knew about cycling, everyone was cheering for cycling. He brought literally millions of people into the sport, I believe. And then the scandal that came out after he admitted to doping, which, don't forget, as Giovanni pointed out in the last video, nobody ever caught Lance. Yeah, Lance never tested positive. So when that scandal broke, it did tremendous damage. It was tremendously damaging to cycling, to the sport, to the athletes, to the sponsors. Everybody suffered and everybody lost a lot of money as a result of it, right? All of a sudden Nike looked bad because they'd supported him. You know, Trek looked bad because they'd supported him. Nobody wants that to happen again. Nobody wants that. Yeah? It's bad. It's bad for business, and business is all that matters to these people. Okay? Cycling, big cycling, professional cycling, as I've told you many times before, it's a business. All that matters is the bottom line. That's all that matters. And they really, really, really don't want to lose that money again. So if somebody like Pogacar or whoever is doping, they're going to turn a blind eye to that because they can't afford another scandal. I mean, could you believe it? What happens if tomorrow it came out that Pogacar was doping? Can you imagine the damage that would do? Like I say, not just to the sport, not just to the cyclists, not just to the fans, but to the profit margins? Are you crazy? How much money we're talking here? We're talking people's jobs on the line. The point I'm trying to make is this: there's too much money involved in professional cycling to have another scandal. So I honestly believe that the testing authorities are turning a blind eye.
One thing I actually forgot to mention during this video, which is always a problem with doing videos while I'm riding my bike, is that a lot of the modern riders have absolutely smashed the times set by riders that we know were originally doping. So, for example, the times set by Lance Armstrong have been smashed by riders who were supposedly clean. So what you're trying to tell me is that modern riders are so unbelievably fit that they are fitter than riders who we know were full of steroids.
But it's also difficult to believe that simply by using some new wheels or eating a little extra bread, as our beloved Slovenian mystic liked to say, that it's possible to beat the times by minutes or crush the wattages and speeds of dirty dopers of the 90s like Friend of the Snows, Pantani, of the 2000s like Low-Cost Lance, or even of the last decade like Adalas de Nifl, all of them chock full of EPO and blood transfusions up to the eyebrows.
Yeah, I don't think the authorities are trying hard enough to catch the dopers because I think they know it wouldn't do them any good anyway. I mean, if I'm right about what I say, that everyone is doping and the reason they don't get found out is because their chemicals are sophisticated enough to avoid the testing, or they just understand how to avoid the testing. If you suddenly change the system for doping overnight, right, and you caught all of them, the entire peloton would disappear overnight. And it's not like you could just replace them, could you? Because who are you going to replace them with? A bunch of people you've never heard of, who have no marketing deals, who've got no sponsorship, who are unheard of, that nobody supports? Is that what you're going to do? Are you going to wipe out your golden goose? Yeah, you're going to kill the golden goose? For what? To discover that they're doping? We know that they're doping. You know what I mean? And then who's to say that the next 300 riders below the 300 you've just knocked out of existence, who's to say they're not doping? And then you go down another level. And then who's to say they're not doping, right? Because, I say the BBC, come on. Oh, he's on the phone, is he? Who's to say, yeah, that they're not doping? The BBC did a survey of cyclists in the UK, and they asked if they were doping. These are like non-professionals. These are just your normal local club riders. And 14% admitted to doping, which means 14% were honest. Yeah, because I guarantee you there's a bunch of people doping who would never tell you, even if it was an anonymous survey. So that's a minimum of 14% of the people you know in the UK, in your local club run, minimum, who are taking performance enhancing drugs. Ha! And then there was a race in Spain that Giovanni told me about. I'd not heard about this, but he'd heard about it. And this race in Spain, like 180 riders, like 130 of them dropped out. Because they were doping. They all got mechanical issues, you know, they all got mechanicals, or they all got, you know, oh, I can't go on. Oh dear, I've got a terrible headache, I've got to stop. And they all did not finish. Probably a UCI sanctioned race. 130 of them dropped out. Virtually no one was clean. So like I say, if you get rid of all the dirty cyclists, who are you going to put in there? I guarantee, I bet what would happen is, right, you'd clear so many cyclists out of the Pro Tour that I'd probably have a chance. I'd probably have a chance of getting in there. Anyway, I'm going to make my way home now because I've got to feed the little girl, and I shall see you guys in the next video. Thank you very much for watching. Do let me know your thoughts below. Am I crazy? Am I wrong? I don't know. Maybe I am. And as always, folks, when you're out riding, do try and stay safe. Bye-bye. Oh, you're kidding me. Another one. Look at that. It's like a Roman Onigar boulder.